It is 6:03, and we welcome each of you to our public hearing on the 2016-17 proposed budget and proposed tax rate. We'll have some comments from Mr. Bryson, Mr. Yandell, and then the public has an opportunity to comment or ask questions. So at this time, Mr. Bryson, Mr. Yandell.
Okay, Mr. Yandell has given you all of the information regarding the budget proposal. Also, we've had several meetings and budget workshops regarding this, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Yandell to cover the budget proposal that we'll look at tonight and the tax rate adoption.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bryce. The proposed budget that we are presenting tonight covers the general fund, covers the child nutrition fund, and the debt service fund. And I'll briefly go over each of these. In the general fund, the estimated revenue for 2016-17 is just under $11 million. It's $537,000 more than it was last year, most of which is in the state revenue area because the increase in our average daily attendance this year, plus the change in the state giving us more money for the lost tax revenue because of the homestead exemption change. The appropriations or the estimated expenditures for 2016-17 are a total of $11,248,000. That's an increase overall of $599,000. That includes the estimate of $260,000 for re-roofing the middle school. That will come from a designated fund balance that's already been set aside for such major repairs as that. It also includes the debt payments for the 20 HVAC units that we are going to finance through the State Energy Conservation Office, as well as financing the purchase of several school buses during this next school year. The child nutrition proposed budget has total revenue of $681,502. It's an increase of $41,370 from the prior year. That's mainly made up of an increase of the federal revenue that we get for the free and reduced meals that we serve. We had an increased participation this year because of what they were allowed to serve this year as opposed to prior years, and that's why the revenue went up. The appropriations or estimated expenditures for the child nutrition fund for 16-17 are $745,929. That's an increase of $66,000 from last year. Of that $66,000, $50,000 of that is for capital outlay expenditures that we've added to the budget because the child nutrition fund balance has gotten to a point where the Texas Department of Agriculture has said that we've reached the maximum that they want us to have in it, so that we've got to spend the fund balance down. So we've added $50,000 to next year's budget to take care of that, to stay in compliance with what the state mandates that we do. The debt service proposed budget has a total estimated revenues of $1,191,000. That's an increase of $155,000 over last year. It's mainly due to the existing debt allotment that we're receiving next year from the state to help pay off our bonds. We're proposing at this point to leave the debt service rate what it was last year, which is 21.1 or 26.1% cents per $100 in valuation. The appropriations for the debt service fund this year are $1,052,781. That's $16,000 more than it was last year. And that is solely because the required debt payments for the debt for 16-17 are more than they were in 15-16. These budgets are the budgets that we've worked on over the last several months that the board has seen detail and has been able to comment and help us to make changes on. It includes the raises that the board approved and other items that the board has approved. I'll be glad to answer any questions that the board may have at this time. I guess, Ms. Wright, if the board has no questions, I'll be glad to answer any questions that the public may have or listen to comments that they may have. Yes, ma'am.
I don't need to come up there, I guess. I just had a question. I wondered if you guys might address, I'm not sure where this falls into the budget, but I know last year, I'm not trying to bring up an item that was tabled, but about the instructional technology, scenario that took place. We spent the last week of the school year being trained and given information on the new assessment instrument that's going to be used for all teachers in the state of Texas. And it has moved tremendously to where in order for us to remain proficient, we are to be using technology in all areas of instruction. And technology used to be where we could just turn on an Elmo or turn on a projector and get some type of credit. And I'm just wondering, I feel like it would have definitely been beneficial to have a little bit more hands-on approach to using the technology that we have in our classrooms throughout this past year, so that we would have been a little more prepared for this coming year where we're going to all be evaluated based on this new assessment. So I was wondering if you guys have something allotted for that would be able to be utilized in the school instead of us having to leave our classrooms with a substitute to go get additional training in another location. Whereas if we have anything in the budget where we could bring someone in that could work with teachers hands-on. If that makes sense. Like,
No, that makes sense to me. I'll address part of that, maybe Mr. Yandel wants to also. To answer the question, no, there's nothing in there as far as a salary for another position. If that is to take place, then that would have to be through a budget amendment at a later date. If it was decided during the year to make a change, then it would have to be through a budget amendment. But as far as planning for a salary for that position for this coming school year, that is not included in the budget. And I totally understand and agree with what you're saying on the new assessment instruments. As you already know, going through the training, 80% of that is going to be dealing with technology. And that is absolutely necessary for teachers to be proficient in their classrooms. And as I said, 80% of it deals with technology. And it's going to be a big learning curve. We'll do what we can as far as training is concerned about bringing outside help in or going to workshops. I know that's not the same as what you're referring to, but that's the way we'll have to address that issue for this coming school year.
Right. My just thought was how much more beneficial it is to have someone, whether it be through a training on site or something like that, instead of going to a workshop where we teachers know that kids learn best doing things hands-on rather than watching a video of someone else doing it. So I just was wanting to see if I could consider the possibility of that type of training. If a salary couldn't be, designated for that at this point, that's understandable. But I just wanted to make a suggestion possibly coming from the educator standpoint as to maybe
Oh, yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I don't know if you're speaking to me or everyone else up here, but I totally agree.
Because I just got back from TASB training last weekend, I went to one of the classes that was all talking about blended and flipped and different ways to use various ways of teaching. And one of the classes that I went to was very much about having the kids engaged, utilizing technology, especially based on the new things that are coming out. But it really talked about the fact, just because a kid takes notes on an iPad doesn't mean they use technology. They could have done the same thing with a pencil and pen and got the same thing accomplished. Just because they read their textbook out of an iPad doesn't necessarily mean they use technology. But it had a lot to do with ways that teachers could engage the kids utilizing technology that wouldn't otherwise engage the same kids. And that's really what we're trying to accomplish. I say we, it's what the state is trying to accomplish, obviously, more than just turning on an Elmo or turning on a projector means you use technology is not the same thing as having a kid that would not otherwise be engaged or would not have otherwise picked up the skill, being able to utilize various whatever it is technology to get them to be able to do so. And that was what the seminar that I went to was on that day. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, I'm very, very aware of it, but it's going to take a little bit more doing to get somebody in the classroom with you.
Is there another comment or question?
Well, I'll just finish up by saying that I appreciate the opportunity to be able to address that and speak about things, just from an educator standpoint, and I have two kids that attend the district as well. So I just wanted to thank y'all for the opportunity to voice that, question and have the feedback from it. So thank you for that.
Thank you for the question. Appreciate it.
If there are no further questions or comments, this concludes our public hearing. And we will call this call meeting of the Board of Trustees to order at 6:16. And the first item is a discussion item. And
Can you start, are you not going to wait till 6:30 for the people that won't be here to start the meeting? The meeting's posted to start at 6:30, so 15 minutes early, it's a little early.
Mr. Ryman, when Mr. Ross and I discussed this, he told me to go ahead and start it.
Well,
Do you want to
normally,
change?
it's up to you, but normally in the past, we go right into it, but I don't know what time that would be as far as in the past. But yeah, that's,
Start if you want to, but we're 15 minutes early.
I'm aware of that. I called out the time.
Being aware of it, it's not the same as doing anything about it.
The first item is a discussion item that I asked to be on the agenda, and it was a question about our travel policy and the time frame in which reimbursements are asked for.
okay, I really, I'll answer any of those questions as far as, if there are questions. You said the time frame in which we are reimbursing employees for their travel expenses.
Yes, I had mentioned the once-a-year request that comes in at the end of the year.
Right.
For a substantial amount, and it's in the accounts payable rather than a part of their payroll. And Mr. Yandel, could you talk about that?
Well, first I'll talk
Okay.
about the part that I'm going to speak to. Number one, yes, it is. That is not part of the income of a person. That is a reimbursement. So therefore, it is not taxable income. They paid ahead of time. We're just reimbursing them. for that. Now, if you look at our travel expense policies under DEE, under guidelines for paying for travel, it says the district's fiscal year ends June 30th, and all mileage reimbursement for the school year must be submitted no later than July 15th of the following year, or reimbursement will be denied. So waiting until the end of the school year is perfectly within the guidelines. I've been in several districts, that's the way it's been done in many districts I've been at. It's something some people will turn in the day they get back for reimbursement. Some people will do it monthly, for each payroll. But some people will do it at the end of the school year. Either way, it all adds up it's gonna add up to the same amount.
Well, and
And it
actually-
is not taxed, it is not subject to taxes.
One thing about it is, though, it doesn't add up to the same amount, because in our business, we do a lot of assessments and organizations and the amount of checks that they have to write based on the number of bills and invoices they receive. If somebody has to take several trips throughout the year, and they bring back 10, 15, 12, whatever it is, dollars every single time, and we have to do the paperwork and cut a check every single time, let's just say it's even once a month, that's a dozen times somebody had to fill out paperwork and we had to cut a check. Or they can save them up till the end of the year and do it once, and it's one form and it's one check. So the cost of the district is substantially cheaper to do it once, as opposed to do it monthly. So it isn't gonna add up to the same numbers, it's gonna be cheaper to add it all at the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm talking about the dollar amount.
Oh, I know,
But you're
obviously, but
exactly
still, there's a
right.
cost to doing business.
You're exactly right.
Mr. Daniel, could you explain what it means to be an accountable plan?
An accountable plan is one in which the employee turns in expenses as documentation for the expenses that are related to a trip that is business-related trip. They're not, if they receive any advances for that, then they have to turn in a form when they come back that accounts for all of the expenses that they did have, and then turn any excess that they received or request additional money if they were not advanced enough. With the mileage that has been turned in by staff and administrators, they fill out a report and detail the date and the destination and the reason that they took the trip that made it related to school business. And that's all the IRS requires that we do in order for it to not be taxable to the employees.
But what does the IRS define as a reasonable period of time?
I mean, the IRS, as far as they're concerned, it'd be within a calendar year. The IRS operates on a calendar year, and we operate on a fiscal year. So the IRS doesn't have any guidelines that you have to be reimbursed on a monthly basis.
Well, the document I was reading said that within a reasonable time, and that if you adequately account for your expenses within 60 days after they were paid or incurred, that you would be within that safe harbor that the IRS talks about. I realize they're not saying it must be done within that time frame. It's saying that within a 60-day
As
window.
Mr. Bryce said, I've been in several school districts, and they've all done it to where some people turn, as he says, some people turn it in the very next day. Some people do a monthly travel expense form, and other people, administrators or other individuals, do it just on an annual basis, because for them, it's more trouble to do it on a monthly basis than it is on an annual basis. I've never had anybody from the IRS or any auditors at all question either of the three methods that's used, as long as the documentation is there to support the expense.
Our DEE local policy does say that reimbursement shall be in accordance with legal requirements.
And that is a legal requirement that's being followed.
How does our school district, what documentation do we require?
Are you talking specifically on mileage, or are you asking Mr. Yandel? On our mileage, the way it is done, as Mr. Yandel said, there's a mileage log that each person will fill out each time they go somewhere on school business. They complete that log, they put the destination that they're going, the reason for the trip, and then they have to attach the mileage to that document. In other words, you do MapQuest to tell you the exact mileage to your destination and back, so that there's no questions. And that way, if somebody is going to a conference and they get to the conference, you know exactly what the mileage is there and back, then all the other running around is not paid for. I mean, it's accountability is what it is. And so each person attaches that MapQuest mileage form to the travel reimbursement request. Mr. Yandel, is there something else that we need to cover on that?
No, sir.
So the actual printout is attached to all those?
Correct.
There are some cases, like if you've got a mileage trip to Region 7 in Kilgore, you know, it's not that that is done by one person once a year. You know, our office sees that often enough. They know what the mileage from here to Kilgore and back is, so we don't require that for every trip just to Region 7 as an example.
Right, you keep that on file because so many take it. But you mentioned going to conferences. These trips that we're talking about accumulated to the end of the year aren't necessarily for those conferences. Those are, I see those done separately in our accounts payable, where they attend a conference in Austin or wherever, that there's mileage separately issued for that. Isn't that correct? So what are these accumulated totals? What kinds of trips are we talking about?
Well, I know, I mean, for example, we have kids participating in an activity, whether it be sports, band, choir, whatever. We certainly encourage administrators to go to those activities. We do that each year. You know, I've never been involved with a school district that didn't encourage administrators to be at activities supporting their kids at school. So that is a business trip. That is part of the business trip. That is reimbursable expenses and reimbursable mileage. And that's a lot of what you're talking about, I guess, other than conferences.
Do you use these amounts at the end of the year to prepare the next budget?
They are included in the budget request of either the campus or of the administrators, the council that are in charge of this.
Well, they certainly have escalated in recent years. An example in 2014, from about $850 to, in 2016, over $2,000.
And I can tell you why that is. That individual, he just didn't put his mileage down. He didn't ask for reimbursement, even though he could have for well over $800. He chose not to. He chose to pay for it himself, and now he's choosing to get reimbursement that is certainly entitled to him. I mean, that's the way it would be in any other business.
I think I'd like to add one thing. I know we charged you several years ago with increasing student participation across all activities, whether it was UIL sports, all of those. And so we've seen a dramatic increase in our students participating in all types of activities. So I would have hoped that we do have more activities going on, and I certainly know I've seen our principals at several events, and knowing that they could only be there for a short time because they were leaving there to go to another different type of event, you know, whether it was at a UIL play that was going on, leaving there, then to go to another event, and then had another event after that. So I think reimbursing our principals and staff for going and being there in support of those students. And then, you know, besides just, you know, we're just giving them the 45 cents a mile, whatever the number is, but we're certainly, the time that they put in is incredible. So
The question isn't the reimbursement, it's how it's asked for, whether there's a better way to do it that would make budgeting better. I don't see how, if you can ask for it one year and not the next.
Well, the person who doesn't budget doesn't have a problem with it,
I just asked him that.
and he doesn't have a problem with it. He
Well,
told you this is how other schools have done it that he's worked out, this is the way this school's always done it.
but if the
you had a
amounts are
question, you could have asked him
jumping.
this question prior to this meeting, you didn't need to take up board meeting time to do so. If you had
Mr.
a question about it,
Raymond,
you
we
could
have
ask.
a meeting to have these discussions.
This was supposed to be just a quick and easy budget meeting. You put this on the agenda. If you had a question, he's open to, anytime you have a question, you can ask him.
which employee do you have a problem with, and what brought this up? I mean,
What
apparently
brings
some,
it up is the substantial jump in the amounts and how that would impact making a budget. And the fact that it would seem to me, now Mr. Yandel maybe says it isn't a problem, that verifying all of that at the end of the year might tend to be tedious. But the question is not the reimbursement or whether it's a legitimate expense.
it's just the time frame in which they turn it in.
You started this to whether or not it was salary or whether or not it was reimbursable, non-taxable.
Because to be accountable, the IRS says you have to do the reimbursement within a reasonable time period.
And Kevin has interpreted that as within the year.
I guess my deal is, so are you wanting to change our policies, because they're within our policies right now? Do you want to look at the future of changing our policies?
Only if someone else sees fit to do, agrees with it. But that's what the discussion is about. Is there a better way?
So that's what we're after. I guess we just need to consult with a tax attorney and find out if what we're doing is legal.
It's legal. It is legal. But it's
It is
not
legal.
within
The
the.
business manager agrees with it. and what-
Would you quit interrupting me, Mr. Raymond? I have the same right to talk that you do.
Okay, I have the same right
So
to
we,
talk as you do.
okay, well, I'll let you talk in just a
Okay.
minute. The IRS guideline says to be an accountable plan, that there are 3 things that have to be met, and Mr. Yandel went over those. And they make a definition of what's reasonable within a 60-day time period.
What they said is that a 60-day time period would be considered reasonable, not that the 60-day time period is what is required. What is required is that it's been a reasonable amount of time. And if the interpretation is a reasonable amount of time between the same school year, then obviously that works. And our people that do the budget seem to have it working, so it hadn't been a problem. He doesn't have a problem with it now, hadn't had a problem in the past, and the people that do our audits haven't had a problem with it.
Are there any other comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. Yandel and Mr. Bryce. We're in the action portion of our meeting. And the first item is to approve the proposed 2016-17 budget.
Okay, Mr. Yandel, go ahead. I know that you just covered it, but I'm go ahead and let you make the recommendation for that.
We presented during the public hearing, a few minutes ago, the budgets for Fund 199, the general fund, Fund 240, the child nutrition fund, and Fund 599, the debt service fund for 2016-17. My recommendation that the board approve these proposed budgets as presented.
I'll make a motion.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the proposed budget as presented. All in favor by show of hands? Unanimous. The next item is to approve the final amended 2015-2016 budget.
Okay, Mr. Yandel, you would cover the budget amendments at this time, the final budget amendments.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bryce. This final amended budget covers the same three funds that the proposed budget does. This final budget amendment takes into account changes in revenue during the year, as well as areas in the budget in which we needed to add money to certain accounts, and in which accounts we budgeted funds that for one reason or another were not needed as we anticipated at the beginning of the year. For the general fund, the total revenue, the final budget amendment would be to increase it by $465,827. Of that, $335,000 of it is state revenue. It's because the revenue is that I've got in the final amended budget is based on our actual attendance and the actual tax revenue that we collected during the year. If the board remembers, when we did the budget for 15-16 last summer, we were conservative in the estimate of the average daily attendance. I believe we estimated it to be 1,310 students. It turned out to be just over 1,360 students. So that's why the state revenue is more than what we anticipated. The federal revenue, which is solely SHAR's revenue, we did our current budget is $110,000. We've already received in excess of $157,000 for this year, so that's why that's increased. As far as the expenditures are concerned, if you go to page 3 of the amendment for the final amended budget for the general fund, and look at the total expenditures, you can see that the net of all of the expenditure changes in all the different functions was an increase of only $42,519. So that made a net increase in this final budget amendment of $423,308, which means that our budget for this year is going to be a deficit of $354,233. That is made up of what we would call our normal budget, and then there were certain repairs and improvements that were approved in 2014-15 and in 2015-16 that totaled $593,923. So if you combine those two numbers, you come up with a net deficit of $354,000. That is going to be the final amended budget for the general fund. For the child nutrition fund, the final amendment is going to increase revenues by $50,000. The majority of that is in the federal revenue. If you remember, in the proposed budget for next year, we increased the federal revenue, and that's because our federal revenue that we actually realized this year was more than what we'd originally budgeted. The net of the increase in expenditures is only $11,100. So we're estimating at this point that we would go from having a deficit in this year for Fund 240 of $39,695 to only having a deficit of $795 for the year. The debt service fund, the only change in the final amended budget that I'm proposing is to add the existing debt allotment that we'll receive from the state for this year, which is $58,457. That's the only change to that particular fund. I'll be glad to answer any questions the board may have on this final budget amendment at this point.
You may have said it, but I was trying to follow along. Under function 51, was that amount for a new employee, or what did you say that was? That 37,400?
That's wages would be wages for custodians and for our maintenance department, as well as an accrual for what's called Medicare Part D, which is, if you remember how I've discussed before, what's called the PRS on behalf, which this is another expense that the federal regulators have said that we have to record in our books the revenue and the expenditure of equal amounts, so it doesn't impact our bottom line. But since it will be an expenditure, I have to increase the estimate the appropriation for it.
Right, but so it wasn't just for one employee, it was for several.
No, it would be for all the salaries for a multitude of our auxiliary staff.
Any other questions for Mr. Bryce or Mr. Yandel? Is there a motion to approve the final amended 2015-2016 budget?
Make a motion to approve the budget.
Mr. Franklin, and is there a second?
Yeah, second.
Ms. Pickle? And all in favor? Unanimous. And item C, deliberation and possible adoption of resolution determining prevailing wage rate for facility improvements and energy efficient upgrades project.
Okay, I will let Mr. Yandel address it, but first of all, this is, as you recall, this is part of our process to go through for the HVAC replacements, going through the SECO loans and that kind of thing. One thing that, of course, you did, many of you did prior to the building of the new campus, elementary campus, was you had to adopt the prevailing wage rate. That's just part of what has to happen prior to some of these construction projects. And so that's what you're looking at. The first page in your budget under that topic is the resolution that we will need to record and send in after we complete it. But the pages following is the prevailing wage rate in the area, and that comes from, well, you can get it nationally or regionally or statewide or narrow it down. And this, of course, is from the help of the attorneys that helped put this together as far as the wage rate information. So, Mr. Yandel, you can go ahead and explain any further.
Since the loan that we're receiving is indirectly coming from the federal government, all of the work that's being done falls under special guidelines that you have to deal with regarding meeting certain minimum wages for the employees that are working on the jobs. And so that's why our attorneys recommended we go through this process for this particular project.
it would be my recommendation to approve the prevailing wage rate for the facility improvements and energy efficient upgrades.
Do we have a motion?
Make a motion.
Mr. Brown? All in favor? Unanimous. And item D pertains to the same project, and it's deliberation and possible selection or designation of architect or engineer independent of the design build firm concerning facility improvements and energy efficient upgrades project. Possible approval of contract.
Okay, in a situation like this, again, a school district is required to go ahead and use engineers for this, for the work to be done. And Mr. Yandel will cover the process on how that was done, but there actually were two engineers from what we get or what we received on the process, on looking at overseeing this construction project that's happening. So that's one of those things that must be done also in this situation. So this basically is going to be looking at the engineer. We've looked at the engineer, both engineer firms on this. They gave all the information about their company and the schools they've worked with and how many have worked with the SECO loan program before. And with all of that information, Mr. Yandel, I will let you finish up with any details regarding that process.
Once we were notified, I was alerted early on in the process by a representative with E3, which is the firm that's in charge of the design build process, that we would be required to hire an outside engineer to look at their work as in the design build process and make sure that it meets the code, that it meets all the requirements that they're supposed to. And so E3 recommended to us two engineering firms that they've done business with before. I contacted the representatives from those two engineering firms. Engineers are among the group of professionals, such as architects and certified public accountants, that governmental entities are not allowed to go out and competitively bid. You're required to go to request their qualifications and then look at their qualifications and determine which one you believe is most qualified. Appoint them as the CPA or the engineer or the architect, and then go through negotiations with that firm to decide what the fee for the services that you're going to need are. So I contacted both firms and requested that they send me their qualifications, and you have in your packet, one firm sent a one-page set of qualifications, and the other firm sent a qualification that was 15 pages long. After reviewing both of the sets of qualifications, I felt more comfortable with Sledge Engineering, since they were recommended by the firm that we're doing business with. It's in charge of our design build. I felt comfortable that they would not have recommended somebody that would not be able to find for us to choose.
Any questions for Mr. Bryce or Mr. Yandel?
I'll make a recommendation to hire Sledge Engineering and enter into a resolution, sign a resolution to work with Sledge Engineering on our project.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Piggle, and a second?
Yeah, second.
Mr. Raymond, all in favor? Unanimous. And item E, consider terminating the school board attorney relationship with Hardy and take any appropriate action. And I did ask to have this item placed on the agenda. And I'll state some brief reasons why my feelings are leaning in this direction, and then we'll see if there's a motion. To go back, I don't know how long, a year or so ago, from time to time, we've had at least one board member, or maybe more than one, at a time express an interest in possibly changing the external auditor that we've had for so many years. And comments would be made that a fresh set of eyes might be beneficial. We were always talked out of this, as there was no need to change, that that person was comfortable with us and we were comfortable with them, and there would be a learning curve. And so consequently, we kept doing things the way they were done. And you know, even when I had the discussion about the travel allowance, one of the answers to my questions over the telephone was, well, this is the way we've always done it. I don't know how you feel about that answer, but I don't ever think that that is a satisfactory answer, that just because it's the way we've always done it, it's no reason to look at it any further. And I'm probably one of those rare elderly persons that still gets her news from the newspaper quite often. And this week I read the article about our county government, and they were presented with information that changing their auditor would be in line with a lot of what other government entities were doing. And they had no complaints about the person that had been doing the audit, but felt like that a fresh set of eyes might be what the county needed. And even our own local commissioner thought that it would be prudent to make such a decision to that. And I realize an auditor is not an attorney, but I'm saying all of this to preface that I have the same feeling about some of our personnel that have been in place for a number of years, that maybe it would be beneficial to our school district to see what another firm has to offer. Comments or questions?
To what end? I mean, it'd be absolutely awesome if we never had to talk to our attorney.
And it would, and you remember that most people on the board didn't even know who the general counsel was. And you were the only one, I think, that finally admitted to having met him at one time in the past.
Yeah, well, it's just, I've got more tenure on the board, but the reality of it is though, for many, many, many years, we never had, I mean, most board members out here never met him because we never talked to him. It wasn't even necessary. We already have one of the top, he's listed as one of the top 5 school attorneys in the state. He's the president of the School Attorney Association. We have one of the best attorneys there is. He is very comfortable with our district. He's done us a great job for over 20 years. In trying to replace him, number one, it's going to be difficult to find somebody with the same background. It's certainly going to cost us more money. So I'm just suggesting that since we have one of the best now, why in the world would we go and find somebody else?
Well, I don't accept your claim that it'll cost more money. You don't know that.
I don't know that. I said,
Well, let's don't say
it's a good
things.
possibility.
It's a possibility.
Okay.
But you also can't judge the cost of something by an hourly rate or how many incremental
No, I'm
minutes.
just saying on what he's done for us in the last 20 years. It has nothing to do with the fact that he's inexpensive as well. The fact that he's inexpensive is just gravy on the thing, but the reality of it is he's listed as one of the top 5 in the state for a reason. He's the president of the school attorneys for a reason. The fact that he's inexpensive is just extra.
Any other comments?
One issue I've had, while I like the Hardys, I personally like both of them, I think there's been a little confusion going from Hardy Senior to Hardy Junior, the times that we've had one or the other. And I would agree that a fresh set of eyes is not a bad idea.
So because they share the same name, it's confusing.
No,
Okay.
No, you know, we had the younger Mr. Hardy one night, and he was not fully understanding what his father had done. It was just a little confusing. He seemed a little confused about what his father had already done, etc.
Well, I mean, I would just have one comment on this. I don't get a vote in this, but the, that night that the younger Mr. Hardy was here, it's because the older, I should say more seasoned Mr. Hardy, was out of town.
Right.
And in 21 years that Mr. Hardy has served this district, that is the only time that the younger Mr. Hardy has been here, or their associate. And in any law firm that you get, they will not be a loaner. They will have associates with them. And you won't get the same one every time, you know. This district has been fortunate to be able to do that. I'll say that. Mr. Hardy was employed by this district far before I got here. And just in conversation, he's always been here for the district and not one of his partners.
Has there never been a discussion about changing council in the past?
The only person I've heard talk about it is you. I mean, that's all I know. I mean, you were talking about it last year, so.
Well, I'm talking about a longer time ago.
Right. And then back to your comment you said earlier, I knew who our legal counsel was, but no, I never had no direct contact with him, but until you became board president, the attorney wasn't here on a regular basis, and he wasn't contacted on a regular basis. So we certainly been involved with him a lot more over the year and a half, but I certainly knew as a school board member who our legal counsel was.
Okay. And the two meetings that they were present at, I believe that you requested them for one meeting. And
Yes, I actually requested I was hoping they would be here tonight. I was out of town when this agenda item was decided, but I think they've served this district well. I know you haven't agreed with the things that they've told you during council, and I think you've made some comments that they recommended Don Sutherland, and the attorney said that no, he did not. And I know that's probably a point of contention, the fact is that they have served this district well. And I think it would be a great loss. We have some issues right now that they've been dealing with for several years, and that we can't discuss it in here, but they've certainly kept this district, out of the courtroom. And so I would hate for us to see us switch attorneys at this point with that ongoing issue still, that we're faced with.
Ms. Wright, I don't have anything against the Hardys at all, but I do agree. I think it's time that we move forward as a district and seek new legal counsel for our district.
How is new legal counsel moving forward? If it's a bad move, it's actually moving backward. It's only possible moving forward. It should be a bad thing. If we end up in a courtroom because we have new legal attorney, new legal counsel, that's not necessarily forward. And forward doesn't necessarily mean a good thing. If you're moving in the wrong direction, forward just gets you further away from where you're supposed to be.
when you look at our accounts payable, the money paid to this firm indicates that they're used very little compared to some other attorneys. And I realize that we always use one in particular for contracts, just like we did on these two tonight. I understand the specialty, but, nearly anything that lands you in a court, there's going to be a special attorney assigned to that anyway.
Do you have a specific problem with them? Have they done something that's upset you that you would want to change? I mean, other than you just want to change personnel. You said personnel that we have, that the school uses for a long time.
Not specific, just the fact, the same way I feel about the auditor, that sometimes you need to let someone else look at what we're doing. Nothing in specific, and I question, I haven't disagreed with anything that Mr. Hardy has told me personally.
Just being in the school business and speaking for what that's worth, most districts will look at the longevity of their legal counsel as an asset the longer they stay with the district. And that's just in general, just speaking. If the legal counsel is representing the district for a number of years, they certainly know history, which new ones wouldn't know. And I'm just saying that from being in different districts, how the districts look at their counsel and the longevity and the time that they've spent there. They look at it as an asset to the district for the most part. And I'm speaking about legal counsel. I'm not speaking of CPA audits.
Any other comments or questions?
Ms. Wright, I'd like to make a motion to terminate our relationship with Hardy Cook and Hardy as general legal counsel for Sabine ISD.
Okay, point of order, there's just unruliness in the audience.
We're going to have to ask the audience to please refrain from whatever noises that you're making. You're here to listen and observe, but it really is distracting when we hear that up here. And your cooperation would certainly be appreciated. A motion has been made.
Could you repeat the motion, please?
To terminate our relationship with Hardy Cook and Hardy as the general legal counsel for Sabine.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And all in favor?
What about any further discussion?
Okay, more discussion, sorry.
I think this is a very, very sad day in our school district. We've had many sad days over the last year and a half. I think you made it very clear, and the new school board members made it very clear last January when they came on board, what their intentions were. You wanted Mr. Bryce to find some way to make the staff accept the road that you were headed down. I still say, where are we going and why? We've had a perfect relationship with legal counsel that kept us out of trouble. And it's really, really sad what you four are doing to our district. And I don't know how long it's going to take to fix this. I just hope there's something when this is over that we can rebuild on.
Any other discussion? All in favor of Mr. Kenneth's motion, please show a hand. Mr. Kenneth, Mr. Taylor, and Ms. Wright. And all opposed? Mr.
All the audience, John is finished.
So we got security. Where is it?
Oh, my God.
Sir, I'm not talking to you, please.
Good. I don't want to hear you either.
Amen.
sorry.
Guess you can fire him too. I said, I guess if you don't like the way he's doing his job, you can have another meeting, decide to fire
I
him
feel the
too.
same, and these distractions and disruptions are really a violation of law.
Well, I'm gonna say this last year and a half has been a severe disruption in our school district.
Paul opposed, Tony opposed, Andre opposed, Mark for, John for, Patty for, Rusty for.
And the next item, to consider retaining new school board legal counsel and take appropriate action.
I would like to ask at this point if you brought in some lawyers to make proposals to us before we move forward with this agenda item.
No, I haven't brought any. I was going to tell you about one that.
So, Ms. Wright, that leads me to believe that you made this decision before we had this meeting tonight. And last I checked, there are 7 board members, and we should all be a part of that decision process and not just you. You have that as an action item tonight, and I don't see how that could be an action item when we're going to be presented one person. We're not going to go out and get bids or at least have some presentations.
Well, I think with professional services, you typically interview. And I would hope that you would at least allow us, I mean, y'all may fall for a vote for the new attorney you picked out, but I would hope that you would at least allow us to interview him tonight, since you have it as an action item.
There's no one here tonight to interview.
Well, you just said that, so,
So why is it on the action item, is the question?
yeah, why would you put it as an action item? You already intended on hiring an attorney tonight?
Possibly. But Mr. Franklin, those contracting firms weren't here tonight either. And we voted on that.
Yeah, but we hired a superintendent and a business manager to bring those, to vet those people. They vetted it. We didn't hire a school board president to vet contractors or professional services. That's not your job. I know you've been doing it for the last year, but that's not your job.
Well, according to TASB, it is a role that the board president can play, and that there is nothing inappropriate about presenting a name for the board to consider. And that discussion took place today. You can follow up and check on it tomorrow if you choose to. But I did have the conversation with TASB counsel, and they tend to disagree with you.
Well, apparently you've already made this decision like the rest of them, so go ahead and vote.
You do realize that's not how a school board's supposed to run.
Absolutely, yes.
You are not supposed to make decisions before you come here. We are supposed to, as 7 members, be presented stuff and make the same decision.
Each of y'all speak, move the mic closer to you so that you can be heard. Do you want to repeat what you said? I don't think that.
I think people can hear me. I'm a pretty loud person.
You know, when we hear these comments about how a board's supposed to operate, we've heard Ms. Pickle tell many times how some of you explained to her how the board was supposed to operate. And it seems like you changed your mind for some reason. Do you want to say that again, Ms.?
It was drilled into me that the majority rules. When the majority makes a decision, the board supports the decision. That when there is dissension, as when the minority decides that they're going to throw a fit, then the situation gets ugly. And the situation is very ugly. And the way a couple of the board members act when we are in open session just leads to this unruliness that we have in the crowd. They are setting the tone. We are setting the tone here, and when they act disrespectful and rude, the crowd acts disrespectful.
You don't think your actions caused this, honestly?
Let me just say this. I took an online class on the board's role. And one of the things we've been doing wrong since the last board election is what I'm going to say, because it didn't happen the 2 years I was on the board before the last board election. It said that board members do not need to make decisions without administrative recommendations. And there have been several times that we have made, board members have made a recommendation without our administration. That's wrong. And that's what's caused some of the craziness up here.
If we as a board had made the
We're
decision.
micromanaging our school.
If we as a board had any interest in changing our attorneys, then what should have happened is you say, hey, Stacy, finds a couple of attorneys that we would like to talk to, bring them in, let us talk to them, let us make a decision on who we want to go with. None of that happened. And that's why we're saying this is not how this is supposed to work, because it's not how it's supposed to work. The reality of it is, we can't even get conversations to occur between board members and administration when they have questions. They want to bring it to a board meeting and have it in open session. All you have to do if you have a question is call somebody and ask me. You can call the superintendent or the business. Every time we get an agenda, it says if you have questions, please call in advance so that they have an opportunity to find and read the details so they can answer the question instead of calling them out in front of the whole building. I mean, it's ridiculous that you can't ask a question prior to coming to a meeting if you have something you're concerned about instead of waiting until you get here to do it. There are a lot of things that are going on that are wrong. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've been around a lot of other boards, and I've been doing a lot of training, and we're not doing it right. We're now a case study for colleges about how things are not supposed to be done.
Excuse me. I moved here 4 months ago.
Excuse me,
Pardon?
we can't have comments from the audience.
Absolutely.
She can remain in the meeting, but we just can't have comments.
It's not a public discussion, it's a board.
The best way to come and speak to us is at our next regular school board meeting. We will have an open forum that you're welcome to sign into, and you get 5 minutes to tell us what you would like to tell us.
And when will that be?
The second Monday of July.
July 11th.
I will be there, and you be there.
Well, to reiterate, I appreciate your comments, Andrea, but again, I talked to TASB in detail, and they said there was nothing wrong with presenting a name to the board to be considered.
Okay, are we
And
just
they
going to
said-
do the presentation tonight and then maybe get to look at some more at another date and then maybe make a vote? Or are we going to have a recommendation from somebody tonight to vote on this person that you're going to present to us?
Well, what's scary is the fact that we now don't have legal counsel. And we fired them before we even talked about it. And now we're gonna... So are you saying TASB thought it was a good idea that we change attorneys?
That is not what I said.
Oh, okay. So that's something you came up with on your own. Well, you and John. You can look at me like that all you want, but I'm way more mad than you are. I promise you. And way more embarrassed.
My next concern with letting go of our lawyer is these are the law firm that has been kind of helping us with this fraud audit we've got going on, and we're just gonna quit when we just started that project? We're just gonna quit with that legal counsel, and they're the ones who helped us get that contract together? I mean, this just doesn't make sense to me. It's not good business practice in my opinion.
Any other comments? The thing I was submitting was,
Can't hear you. Speak in the mic.
the name of, the name I was submitting is Blake Armstrong with Birdsong and Armstrong of Tyler, Texas. I have met with Mr. Armstrong and he,
What is that recourse? What is that recourse?
It's a public meeting, you can't clear the room.
the disturbance is very
Then
widespread.
you're too easily disturbed.
Amen.
No, I'm not easily disturbed.
Obviously,
So-
they're not bothering me.
Is he here to present to us tonight, and we go get to meet the man, or?
No, he is not here. I'm sure you will get to meet him at some point.
Isn't that how Obamacare got passed? You can read it after it's passed?
Can we impeach? Just ask for a motion, let's get this out.
Absolutely.
So that leads me to believe that maybe this was decided before you came into this room. Again, like I just said, it said that it's not good board policy to make recommendations or motions against our administrators. Our administrator hasn't even had an opportunity to even look at other lawyers, if that's what the route we want to take. I mean, I would like to see more than one lawyer be brought up here to be looked at. I think that would be good business. I would do that for my own personal self. I would not just jump out and hire somebody because this is the person I looked at, or because one person told me that's who you need to hire. I would do some digging on my own. I have not had not even one opportunity to look at this person. And you want me to vote on it tonight? That really makes sense to you? I mean, it really does?
Rusty, tell me you're not for this.
The only thing I'd like to say is that we have just went through this exact process when we just hired that company, Sledge Engineering, based off a recommendation from Mr. Yandel. So, I mean, I have as much confidence in the ability for her to bring a name to this board as I do for an attorney, as I do for him for a contracting firm.
And where has she been trained to pick out a school attorney? Mr. Bryce and Mr. Yandel have been trained to handle
In what way?
engineering. It's
We
part
we
of-
didn't hire a contractor tonight, by the way, which has been said, which, we didn't hire a contractor.
Engineering firm.
We gave you the ability to make those.
Right.
That's his job.
But this, I mean, does everybody get a copy of this that you
I
have?
don't even know this man. Heard his name for the first time tonight.
He practices, what all, not just a school lawyer, it's injury law. He practiced personal injury law, commercial litigation, Section 1983 civil rights litigation, and municipal law, along with school law. I mean, I'm just saying everybody ought to have the opportunity to know about this.
On his website, he has it listed, and I just find it funny, he has listed that he's other cities' attorneys, and he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, including Poyer City as cities that he represents. Under schools, he has 2, Poyer and Athens. So I'm not thinking he has a whole lot of school law experience if he has 2 schools. And one of them's Poyer.
So it stands to reason he will have time to deal with our situation,
That's not necessarily a good thing.
but it could be.
I doubt it. We shouldn't need him for a lot of time. That's kind of the point.
I just heard somebody say, let's move on with a motion.
Do we have a motion?
That's right, I trust your judgment, and I'd like to make a motion to retain Blake Armstrong as the general legal counsel for Sabine High School.
Is there a second? And all in favor? Mr. Taylor, Mr. Taylor, and opposed? Mr. Franklin, Mr. Raymond, and Ms. Bates.
We're opposed.
The board will now recess this open session and convene in a closed meeting.
Ms. Wright, before we go into closed session, I would like to request that this meeting and all of our future closed session meetings be recorded. They can be sealed where no one has access to them, I guess except legal counsel, or anyone has a legal right to them. I feel like over the past year and a half, we've had several discussions in closed session that were not legal, been off topic several times, and I'd like to see that stop. And I know that one way to have that happen is to record those meetings, because people will be very mindful of what they say. I know I've been attacked in closed session several times by board members, and I'd like to see that stopped. So I request that we, number one, start recording those meetings, and then number two, I've not ever been on a board where board members call for personnel to be discussed in closed session. So if you intend to talk about any personnel that work for this school in closed session, I think they have a legal right to be in that closed session and to hear those conversations also. And I think they also have the right, if they so wish to, is to have those conversations in open forum. So whatever employees you intend on talking about, I think we need to request that they come into closed session with us for those discussions.
Yeah.
Your item is not on the agenda.
Well, it doesn't matter, we're going into closed session. I'm asking that the closed session be recorded.
Well,
What is the closed session for? We're not hiring anybody. We haven't hired anybody? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, as far as my part is, yes, I'll have two recommendations for hire. I have no idea what.
Okay, we can't go into closed session because you want to talk in private.
pardon?
So, we have to have some understanding. I mean, when you go into closed session to discuss personnel, it can't be because you just don't want to talk about them in public. And if the person that's being discussed doesn't know about it, then how in the world can they offer to say that they want to be part of it? That's why I'm curious to know why was it on your request to have personnel in closed session?
It was on my request because Mr. Bryce and I both received an email to that effect. I thought he had the same information.
The information I had was I wanted discussed at the next meeting. So if we're talking about two individuals that were in that, that's not what you sent to me as far as what you wanted on the agenda.
Okay, I thought his request to discuss it would have to be in a closed session because it was
Whose request?
personnel.
It was my request. But I don't have a problem if they need to come into closed session, that's fine.
But they have the option of having it in open
Okay.
session.
Okay.
That's the option.
Okay.
We don't make that call.
We're recessing this open session and convening in closed meeting to discuss personnel as allowed by government code, chapter 551.074.
Are we going to consider recording closed session moving forward?
It's not on the agenda, how can we do that?
Real simple, we just decide as a board, that's what we're going to do. I guess you can call your attorney right now and ask him. But I think it's perfectly legal to record closed session, and I think it'd be very well advised.
The attorney that you wanted to keep strongly advised against any recording of that.
Well, he had no idea what goes on in our closed sessions. If he was here right now in our closed session, he would tell us.
In our closed session. He was there one night. In closed
Yes, and he scolded us several times for getting off topic, but he's not with us anymore.
Okay, Okay, my question is, are we talking about individuals in this closed meeting that you sent me? Is that your request to talk about them?
Yes.
Okay. Cindy Bryce, do you want this to be an open session? Okay, let's go for it.
Who was the second person? No, the second employee.
What? Ms. Pickle, you said that's not a smart idea. It's the law. No, I agree, it is not a smart idea.
It's not smart.
You're right, it is not smart. You're absolutely correct.
Are you trying to tell Ms. Bryce what she's doing is wrong?
Look, I don't know what it is. So, that's you. That's you.
It's not part of their plan.
Can we just table this? No! I move that we table this. I'd like to move that we table this discussion.
What about the second employee? Who is that?
I'd like to move that we table both discussions.
Mr. Bryce, I'm asking you who the second employee is, so they'll have time to prepare and have legal counsel the next time it's not tabled.
I will have to get with them on that. I know the request that Rusty sent, and I know the whole situation. I'd love to go into it right now, but anyway, we won't. But the other one, I will visit with the board about that.
They need to at least know ahead of time so they can be present
Exactly.
and have legal counsel.
They will.
There was a motion to table that request, to postpone it to a later date. Is that your motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a second? Okay. And
Excuse me, I apologize for interrupting. Ms. Davis, could you correct me on what points in the meeting occurred?
Could you repeat yourself?
What point in the meeting are we currently in?
Well, I really can't legally answer that because I'm kind of confused myself. But we went into closed session at 21, but we never did officially go into closed session, so I take it we're still in open.
all in favor of Mr. Taylor's motion and Ms. Pickle's second? Show of hands.
I'm not voting on something like this. It's ridiculous. I think this train's gonna run off the track.
All opposed? All abstaining?
I don't even think it's a vote.
The motion to table passed by a vote of 4, and I suppose there were 3 abstentions.
I think you probably ought to get our attorney, this new attorney we have here, as quick as possible. I see this district being in several lawsuits.
The board will now recess this open session and convene in a closed meeting to discuss personnel as allowed by 551.074. It is now 7:28, and this open meeting is recessed. We are reconvening in open session. It is 8:37. Yes, Mr. Ross, do you have recommendations?
It's my recommendation to employ Brandy Heimer at the elementary school and Cassie Madden at the high school.
I move that we hire Brandy Heimer for the elementary and Cassie Madden for the high school.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? It was unanimous. Is there any further discussion? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
Mr. Franklin and Ms. Pickle seconded. All in favor? Unanimous. It is 8:38. Oh, we have to-